a humble beginning, from frost to flame. Welcome to a story that begins, not in the glittering showrooms of modern luxury, but in the biting cold of Gothenburg, Sweden, where destiny often comes disguised as hardship. Picture it. A town battered by endless winters and soaked in the perpetual grayness of poverty. Two boys, Asser Gabrielsson and Gustav Larsson, trudge through the icy streets, more likely to dream of a hot meal than horsepower or world domination. Before you blink and this humble scene melts away in the heat of future success, let's set the stage. Volvo, a name that will soon ring out as a titan among car brands, started with nothing more than frost underfoot and empty pockets. Take a second now and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And while you're here, subscribe to Motor Chronicles because, trust us, this tale is just getting started. It's easy to look back with the benefit of hindsight and imagine that legends are simply born great, but nothing could be further from the truth. Gabrielsson was the son of a railway worker, and hard labor was the family currency. The railroad steel wasn't even half as cold as the silence left by loved ones lost. His father passed away when Asser was still shaping dreams from smoke. Meanwhile, young Gustav witnessed the world transform around him, his comfort as fragile as a pane of Swedish glass. Both men would internalize these bleak origins as marching orders. Always ahead, never break, and above all, never let misfortune decide your fate. Their story isn't about privilege. It's about crawling from the snowdrifts, shivering, scraping for every scrap just to survive, before daring to build something immortal. The Sweden of their youth was a cauldron of contrasts. The world reeled from the aftershocks of global crises, and industries either collapsed into ruin or grasped for relevance by reinventing themselves. Yet within this brittle environment, the seeds of invention burrowed deep, dreaming beneath the ice. Gabrielsson and Larsson, with little more than a stubborn sense of possibility, set their sights on a challenge nobody sane would touch: building a Swedish car that could stand its ground against the giants of Detroit and the old masters of Stuttgart. You might be wondering, seriously, how did a pair of underdogs with empty accounts and too many bills think they could survive in such a brutal climate, let alone win? Well, that's why you're here. But the world didn't just throw snowballs at these would-be visionaries. Early Swedish cars were a joke by foreign standards, fragile, impractical, and sometimes borderline dangerous. Imported models broke down on the first snow, their engines coughing in defeat, their bodies bending under the cruel Scandinavian wind. To most, it seemed destiny itself was rigged against anyone foolish enough to dream of a Swedish automobile. The global titans of the industry, with their armies of engineers and bottomless vaults, barely acknowledged these northern upstarts existed. Across the Atlantic, Ford was pumping out Model Ts by the millions. In Germany, Mercedes-Benz flexed engineering muscle on another level. Yet still, Gabrielsson and Larsson pushed forward, refusing to let logic or the howling Arctic wind snuff out their ambition. Courage alone won't warm factory floors at 40 below, and neither man had much money to coax ambition into reality. So they hustled. Every coin earned was a victory. Gabrielsson, with firecracker determination, worked tirelessly in offices by day and fueled by cold coffee at night. Larsson, more reserved but equally relentless, built his reputation with meticulous engineering work, earning respect job by job, client by client. If failure tried to freeze their spirits, it learned quickly that Swedes have a knack for turning setbacks into stepping stones. Little by little, step by freezing step, the foundation for something enormous was being set beneath their tired boots. Now fate, as always, relishes irony. Sweden, a nation famous for stoic silence and humility, would somehow give birth to what would become the loudest roar in the automotive safety revolution. The hardships faced by these two men became their crucible, a trial by ice and fire. And here's where the story begins to pick up speed. Early tragedy gave way to stubborn resilience. Their tenacity would cut through obstacles like an iron plow through drifted snow, pulling the impossible from the jaws of certain defeat. The dream? Not just to survive, but to build something that would outlast the darkness. Of course, dreams alone are fragile. The world doesn't award any medals for big ideas scribbled on napkins or plans whispered through the winter wind. What Gabrielsen and Larsson needed most was an ally. A force powerful enough to gather scattered hopes and weld them into steel. Against all odds, they found partners, a smattering of believers, and even access to a small workshop. The earliest days of Volvo weren't glamorous. Think rickety machines, borrowed tools, and untold trial and error on every nut and bolt. Each minor triumph, a test passed, an engine that sputtered into life, was celebrated with the intensity of a championship victory. Yet the greatest motivation came not from competition, but from loss. The streets of Gothenburg echoed each year with the sounds of accidents, violent, unforgiving reminders that life could be snuffed out faster than a candle in a draft. Gabrielsen, especially, nursed a private anguish. He'd lost friends, seen promising boys cut down just as their lives began. Out of tragedy's shadow emerged the greatest calling of all. Not to chase glory or riches, but to protect people from the kind of heartbreak poverty can't fix. It wouldn't be enough for Volvo to survive. To justify its very existence, it would have to do something the Titans, Ford, Daimler, Renault, hadn't dared or hadn't cared to do. The Swedish machine would champion safety, not just speed. Each bruise, every defeat, became more than a memory. It became a design principle, a stubborn refusal to accept risk as a side effect of progress. In those quiet moments, when doubts clawed at hope, Gabrielsen and Larsson dreamed not of sleekness or raw power, but of a car that could save a child's life. That obsession became the blood in Volvo's veins. So here we are, poised at the real beginning. A humble pair of founders, battered by weather and destiny, are about to change the future. All because they have suffered enough to know what really matters. The next time you see that distinct iron badge and hear Volvo's name, remember, it was built by men who knew precisely how much it cost to survive. Before we hit the accelerator on this journey, don't forget to subscribe to Motor Chronicles. We have a lot more stories and even more unanswered questions. Like what secrets lay hidden in the Swedish winter, awaiting discovery? Leave us your thoughts below. Let's keep this conversation rolling. An industry rife with chaos. Step with us now beyond the snowy edges of Sweden, into a world that runs on adrenaline, gasoline, and just a bit too much blind faith. The early automotive industry was no shining beacon of technological progress. Rather, it was a cauldron boiling over with risk, rivalry, and straight-up recklessness. The titans of America and Europe battled for market share with little concern for the bodies left behind, quite literally, as cars of the era were moving coffins. Every journey was a gamble, every turn an invitation for disaster. Seat belts? Airbags? Those belonged to the stuff of wild-eyed fiction, not the chrome-plated dreams rolling off Detroit's assembly lines. Car crashes weren't just likely, they were almost inevitable. In those days, motoring meant tempting fate every time you turned the ignition. Statistics rarely lied. Fatalities on the road multiplied year after year. Governments didn't have time or perhaps the will for regulations. Instead, the major brands pressed their advantage, treating speed as the only measure worth worshipping. A little spoiler for those keeping track, the word safety didn't even appear in most brochures, and if it did, you could bet it was written in barely legible fine print. The irony burned bright. Machines designed to liberate humanity were just as likely to leave families in mourning. Let's take a detour to America, the land of manifest destiny and unchecked ambition. Henry Ford's Model T turned the country into a rolling sea of black steel. Affordable, yes, but not forgiving in accidents. There were no crumple zones, just bones and rivets. As for Europe, brands like Daimler and Benz waged economic warfare, their machines doubling as status symbols and lightning rods for mechanical catastrophe. Competition was cutthroat. Legends like Ettore Bugatti and André Citroën danced on the thin ice between genius and insolvency. Sometimes the results dazzled. More often, Newspaper headlines told the real story. Another weekend, another lives lost. In the swirling chaos, manufacturers latched onto every trend except responsibility. Marketing departments crafted fantastical visions, armadas of gleaming, unstoppable vehicles conquering continents. In reality, there was little protection for the average driver but hope and a little bit of luck. Racing accidents involving celebrities garnered sympathy, but the daily toll of ordinary people barely made a blip in the public's imagination. The perverse irony? Each new model promised more speed, more power, and more prestige, but never real peace of mind. Meanwhile, in Sweden, every death on the icy roads was a somber punctuation mark in Volvo's emerging narrative. Gabrielsson and Larsson watched as their countrymen became statistics, not just customers. Engineers from Stockholm to Malmö combed through the aftermaths, developing a growing sense of horror and urgency. Sweden's climate only made things worse. Vehicles imported from the south, never designed for permafrost and snowdrifts, consistently failed the ultimate test: survival in the north. There was talk in dark taverns and quiet kitchens that maybe cars, for all their wonder, were simply too dangerous for everyday life, an experiment that humanity had rushed before it was ready to pay the bill. The industry's disregard for safety bred a culture where risk was worn like a badge. Clever advertisers turned hazards into marketing hooks. Feel the power, race-bred engineering, never compromise on speed. The unspoken truth dangled in the fine print. For every mile per hour gained, there was an invisible cost in lives and limbs. In cities, it wasn't uncommon to find government officials quietly calculating casualty statistics, weighing the benefits of economic expansion against a rising tide of public grief. Inside boardrooms, debates raged about quarterly profits and global expansion, but not about seatbelts. Company bosses, many of whom never drove themselves, bragged about record output and international acclaim. Engineers who dared to suggest adding safety features were dismissed or, worse, laughed out of meetings. Why waste time on soft qualities when hard metal and horsepower were the currency of kings? It would take much more than noble intentions to break this ironclad obsession with performance. Yet, through all this, there were flickers of conscience. A handful of engineers, haunted by memories of friends and family lost, began to fight for change. Some penned anonymous letters to newspapers. Others conducted experiments in secret, strapping mannequins and livestock into crude contraptions to simulate crashes. Their voices were mostly ignored, sometimes ridiculed. But in Sweden, their ideas found fertile ground. The notion that cars could, and should, be something more than beautiful machines of risk began to take hold among a daring minority. The tension was everywhere, between profit and principle, between the urge to impress and the drive to protect. Every crisis eventually exposes the cracks in the system. As cars grew faster and busier roads became the veins of economic progress, societies could not ignore the mounting carnage. Public opinion began to curdle. Journalists, once satisfied with glamorous test drives and schmoozy product launches, started to ask pointed questions. Why must innovation come laced with tragedy? Why accept as normal the notion that every family's gain is shadowed by another's loss? Still, for every headline, there were 100 stubborn voices defending the status quo. If you don't like risk, don't drive, they'd say, as if the dream of mobility meant signing away your right to survive. In fact, some automakers even quietly profited from the notion that danger was masculine, glamorous, or inevitable. It was a convenient story, until the day someone dared rewrite the script entirely. And if you think the solution came from Detroit or Stuttgart or Paris, think again. The world had made space for bravado, for bravura engineering and swelling egos. But history, ever the trickster, would grant the honor to the land of silence and snow, where compassion ultimately trumped pride. The world's most dangerous industry was about to face a Swedish intervention, equal parts humility and audacity. Countless lives would hang in the balance. As the engine of progress roared forward, it would soon slam headlong into something even the Titans could not ignore, a revolution in safety. But that, as always, is a story best saved for the next chapter. Trace, collision course, the three-point revolution. History, it seems, has a brutal sense of timing. The world hurtled on, chasing speed records and mechanical miracles, while somewhere in the frozen north, a problem waited like a wolf at the door. By the year 1959, the automotive titans had failed to deliver what the public desperately needed, hope in the form of safety. Gabrielson and Larson knew the stakes were higher than ever, and Volvo, now more than a fledgling company, hovered on the edge of irrelevance if it could not rise above the carnage gripping the industry. In Sweden's relentless winter, brilliance sometimes reveals itself not in thunder or lightning, but in the quiet persistence of people determined to do the right thing. Enter Nils Bohlin, a Swedish aviation engineer whose arrival at Volvo would alter the course of automotive history forever. Bohlin, a quiet man by demeanor but a giant in vision, brought with him a background forged in jet fighter cockpits. He understood firsthand what it meant to be hurled at impossible speeds, and more than that, he knew what was at stake when an error occurred. Those with knowledge of aviation safety saw a car's dashboard differently, as both a marvel and a lurking threat. Bohlin's task sounded deceptively simple: design a restraint system that could save lives, not just slow bodies. But an answer eluded everyone. Traditional harnesses, adapted from planes, were cumbersome and unwieldy, almost as likely to hurt you as help. The global giants had flirted with lap belts and even chest straps, yet none provided real protection. Ironically, attempts to protect passengers had, in many cases, only increased danger. What the world needed was something elegant, ingenious, even. With the clock ticking and public faith in manufacturers plummeting faster than a stock on Black Monday, Bohlin got to work. He dissected the failures of every existing system with clinical precision. What he dreamed up was stunning, so stunning, in fact, that it would be dismissed by some as too obvious. The three-point safety belt, a design as clean as a snowdrift and as strong as Swedish steel, anchored a single belt over the shoulder and across the hip. It took seconds to fasten and, crucially, distributed crash forces across the chest and pelvis, not just the waist. In a head-on collision, this could be the difference between a bruise and a burial. The revolution hid in plain sight. When the prototype made its debut, skeptics scoffed. Boardroom naysayers muttered about cost, inconvenience, and, naturally, whether drivers would resent being tied down. Journalists asked, ironically, if real men even needed protection. The marketing teams worried. Would a focus on safety make Volvo seem weak, even cowardly, compared to Detroit muscle and Italian flair? Bohlin persisted, echoing a now legendary Swedish lesson. True strength is measured by how well you protect the vulnerable. In factories across Gothenburg, workers tested the system in crash labs, not with mannequins but with living volunteers, engineers and executives willing to put their convictions on the line. Every successful test brought celebration. Every setback, a redoubling of effort. The company's mission was evolving before their eyes. Still, the winds of resistance blew hard. Even as evidence mounted, rivals across Europe and America dismissed the three-point belt as a Scandinavian curiosity. Some insisted that drivers would refuse to buckle up, while others argued that the device would interfere with comfort and freedom. The most ironic twist? Many automakers had flirted with similar designs in secret, quietly shelving them for fear of public backlash or lost profits. Meanwhile, Volvo doubled down, integrating the new belt into all their vehicles, betting the factory on an idea that could kill the brand or save millions. The risk was immense, not just financially, but in reputation. Few companies had ever staked their future on protecting lives, rather than chasing headlines or luxury margins. This wasn't just a technical breakthrough, it was a moral crucible. Critics attacked, but Volvo stood firm, their engineers driven alike by sorrow over past tragedies and hope for a better world. The launch ad campaign didn't glorify horsepower or dazzling paint jobs. Instead, it featured stories, real families, near misses, children arriving home safely after crashes that could so easily have turned fatal. For once, Marketing was grounded not in fantasy, but in heartbreak averted and futures preserved. Across Sweden, a debate flared. Was this too little, too late, or finally proof that one company understood the real price of progress? As word began to spread, the initial laughter froze in the wind. Other manufacturers took notice. Safety advocates, labeled as cranks for decades, now pointed to Volvo as the new North Star. The Swedish firm received letters from grateful survivors. News footage captured miraculous escapes, and journalists, once dismissive, now lined up to interview Bohlin and his team. The narrative had shifted, and with it, the stakes. If one small automaker could take a stand, what was stopping the rest? Competitors, furious and befuddled, privately acknowledged the truth. The genie was out of the bottle. The world was watching, and the tide could not be rolled back. Behind every breakthrough lies both pain and perseverance. The three-point safety belt was born not in an ivory tower but in the crucible of crisis, murders of the past echoing in the minds of Volvo's leadership. This wasn't about besting rivals or selling another car. It was atonement, a public promise that every life lost was not forgotten. The irony of the situation was clear. As the roaring engines of the world's most powerful brands continued to chase glory, it was the quiet men in the frozen north who took the road less traveled, steering history toward compassion instead of conquest. So, in the year 1959, the world changed not with parades or fanfare, but with the faint click of a seatbelt sliding into place. Volvo's engineers didn't just design a device. They threw down a gauntlet at the feet of an industry and dared everyone else to follow. The era of the three-point safety belt had arrived, and with it, a new understanding: survival need not be a privilege. The revolution had started quietly, but its echoes were destined to ring out for generations. Safety over profits, the patent paradox. Behind every seismic change in history, there is always a moment that defies logic, one where the smart money walks away and only conviction remains. For Volvo, that moment came not with an invention, but with a choice so radical it made industry insiders do a double take: to waive the priceless patent on the three-point belt and gift it to humanity. Imagine the reaction in corporate boardrooms everywhere. The lawyers winced, the analysts groaned, and competitors either sneered or laughed nervously. Fang-toothed capitalists had always guarded their golden ideas with iron fists. Yet here was this modest Scandinavian company, still viewed as a peripheral player, going against every unwritten rule by putting lives before bottom lines. The story reads like a classic Swedish paradox, equal parts stubborn and shockingly generous. Volvo could have charged a king's ransom for its innovation, locking rivals out for decades and swelling its coffers to dizzying heights. But within the frosted glass towers of Gothenburg, another calculation was at play. Asser Gabrielsson, Gustav Larsson, and their increasingly obsessed team confronted the question that defines a legacy. Is it better to be rich or to be right? The answer was as clear as winter air. They chose people, millions of strangers, over profit. They would share the three-point belt with the world, royalty-free. Some called it naive. Industry veterans muttered that the Swedes had lost their minds, mixing business with bleeding heart ideals. But history is rarely made by those who cling to caution. Volvo made a public statement that echoed far beyond Scandinavia, declaring that the significance of their safety innovation transcended commercial gain. The irony is impossible to miss. In the age-old chase to be the smartest guy in the room, the true genius was the one who refused to keep the gold for himself. The decision didn't happen in a vacuum. Newspapers in Paris, Munich, Detroit, and Tokyo carried the story. A tiny automaker had just pulled the rug out from under the industry's feet. Safety advocates cheered, while rival executives scrambled to reassess strategies. A handful of the world's largest manufacturers tried to save face, rushing to adapt their own belt systems, often begrudgingly. The global domino effect was unstoppable. Regulations changed, insurance actuaries recalculated their grim spreadsheets, and the age-old narrative that profits come first began to show cracks. Volvo, meanwhile, doubled down on its ethos. If the world wanted a real seat at the table of progress, it would mean swallowing the truth. The three-point belt belonged to everyone now, and so did the responsibility that came with it. Engineers who had spent sleepless months on the project felt a surge of pride and anxiety in equal measure. Would the gamble pay off? Or was this the kind of idealism that crippled companies for good? Detractors wagged fingers, warning Volvo that altruism was an expensive currency. But markets are fickle, and sometimes justice has a sweet sense of irony. As more drivers survived crashes, stories trickled in from all corners of the globe. Mail carriers, young mothers, athletes, even heads of state, each owed their lives to a strip of fabric and a bolt of Swedish engineering. Suddenly, what had seemed like corporate madness began to look a lot like vision. Sales didn't plummet. They soared. The brand's reputation for courage and compassion became its new calling card, a badge of honor that no ad campaign could buy. Of course, dollops of doubt remained. Some rivals fumed, believing their own fortunes had been stolen. Others begrudgingly acknowledged the revolution as irreversible. The irony struck again. Those who had scoffed now rushed to mimic, while Volvo, freed from defensive maneuvers, poured its newfound resources into research and future-forward innovation. There was no time for self-congratulation. The world had taken notice, and the company's ethical standard was now the bar by which all others, willingly or not, would be judged. Yet, at the heart of this paradox was something simultaneously tragic and triumphant. For every life saved, there was the memory of one lost along the way. The boardrooms of Volvo were haunted by the faces and names that statistics had too easily erased. This was the legacy they wanted to create, a living monument in which each traveler had a chance to return safely home. The three-point belt became both icon and reminder. Progress isn't measured just in innovation, but in the humility it takes to share what matters most. Sweden's gift to the world was not merely a device, but a daring philosophy. The lesson endures, echoing well beyond the car industry. True leadership sometimes looks like walking away from fortune for the greater good. The patent paradox redefined what it meant to win in business. Not by outmaneuvering rivals, but by rewriting the rulebook altogether. The gold rush for patents would continue among others, but for Volvo, now recognized as a titan with a conscience, the road ahead was clear, paved by an unlikely blend of compassion and cunning. The warning to the rest: stick to old logic at your peril. The world just might take inspiration from the snow. Changing the course, a global ripple. The story of the three-point safety belt did not end on Swedish soil. It was the catalyst for a worldwide awakening, shaking regulators and rival companies into a frenzy. Volvo's bold gesture sent waves rippling across countries and continents, forcing a reckoning in boardrooms from Tokyo to Detroit. The European Standards Commission, wary at first, rewrote its entire rulebook on car safety. American lawmakers scrambled to keep up, passing new mandates in the year 1966 that finally compelled manufacturers to take safety seriously. Never before had a single innovation flipped the script for so many so quickly. It was as if a stone, cast in the Swedish snow, had tumbled through history, gathering speed and transforming lives with every roll. The belt became a standard not only in new models but also retrofitted into older vehicles. School buses, ambulances, race cars, all saw their designs reshaped, their priorities realigned. In nations where regulation lagged behind, public campaigns surged. News outlets recounted miraculous escapes and dramatic near-death experiences, cementing the three-point belt's legend. The ripple effect created a safety consciousness that permeated more than just automobiles. It sparked debates about everything from train travel to aerospace engineering. Who could have predicted that an idea born from tragedy and launched into the marketplace for free would become the guardian angel behind so many metallic doors? Volvo itself transformed. No longer merely an underdog, it became a global juggernaut for engineering integrity and corporate responsibility. Commercials featured real families, engineers with faces tired but proud, and images of battered cars with passengers still smiling inside. Sales climbed as safety became a selling point, not just a footnote. European and American consumers began to associate the iron badge with the idea that real heroes don't wear capes. They fasten seatbelts and refuse to cut corners. Irony again. A company once mocked for prioritizing protection now set the new gold standard. Brand loyalty swelled, and Volvo's presence in global markets was solidified by something stronger than profit: trust. The three-point belt also created a ripple in the hearts and minds of competitors. Initially, some clung to their outdated logic, dismissing safety as a Scandinavian fad. It didn't take long for others to reverse course, swallowing pride to adopt Volvo's innovation. Automotive engineers worldwide started obsessing over crash statistics with renewed urgency, launching a feverish rush for safer frames, crumple zones, and predictive safety systems. The belt was not just a device, but a call to arms, a marker signaling that the race was no longer just for speed but for the right to protect. NGOs and advocacy groups seized the momentum, pressuring governments to support innovation and enforce accountability. The belt became the centerpiece of public service announcements, educational materials, and survival stories. Statisticians compiled numbers with awe. Millions of lives saved, billions of injuries prevented since the belt's introduction. Numbers written out in letters, 10 million lives in less than half a century. The revolution was tallying its victories with the cold precision and emotional punch only the Swedish knew how to deliver. Brand rivals tried to reclaim glory with splashy new tech, airbags, side impact beams, electronic stability control. Yet none hit harder or resonated deeper than the humble three-point belt. The world, once skeptical, now measured automotive greatness with a new yardstick. Would a car save you when it mattered most? Volvo, for all its restraint, was now an unstoppable giant, the vanguard of an industry learning to respect the terrible power and responsibility it wielded. The ripple even touched culture itself. Movies and books began showing seat belts as talismans rather than afterthoughts. Songs celebrated the notion of safety as cool, overturning decades of dangerous glamour. School children learned the belt's importance before they ever sat behind a wheel. In boardrooms, risk analysts calmly noted how much less insurers now paid out, their tone reverent whether they admitted it or not. A wave of admiration, both public and private, lifted Sweden's little automaker into the realm of myth. Yet with every victory, new tensions surfaced. Could the world maintain its commitment in the face of complacency? Would the next generation remember the lessons hammered out on frozen Gothenburg streets? Rivalries endured, as did the temptation to cut costs or compromise codes. But the belt's legacy endured because it was forged in pain, humility, and defiance, not in pursuit of fleeting glory. So, Volvo's story transformed not only an industry, but the very idea of progress itself. The global ripple was more than momentum. It was a movement. The Swedish devotion to human life, humble beginnings and all, forced titans of the world to pause, reflect, and reinvent. Safety was no longer an option. It was the new bedrock of modern civilization. Legacy forged in steel, today and beyond. Most stories end at the peak, but this one flows onward. A legacy bolder than steel and broader than the icy streets where it began. When you see a Volvo today, gliding quietly past chaos, it's easy to forget the epic struggle anchoring every gentle turn. The Iron Badge isn't just a symbol of Nordic craftsmanship. It's a shield wrought by decades of heartbreak, innovation, and the stubborn belief that every life holds infinite value. The world's safest car did not simply appear. It was hammered, day by day, out of frost, fire, and failure, until the Swedish philosophy of protection saturated each bolt and seam. The statistics, though coldly rational, carry tremendous weight. Over 60 million cars built, each one echoing Bohlin's invention, a web of steel and webbing that binds fate to hope. 10 million lives spared since the belt's debut, countless families reunited, and generations of drivers able to chase their dreams rather than flee disaster. These aren't just numbers. They are testimonies that resilience and mercy overshadow the glory of margins and spreadsheets. Volvo's commitment to safety has become so deeply woven into automotive culture that even their fiercest competitors now measure victory not in horsepower or chrome but in survivability. Technological change never rests. Volvo has taken its safety obsession to ever higher levels, introducing pedestrian airbags, collision avoidance systems, and algorithms capable of reading minds, or at least predicting the unpredictable. Still, the three-point belt remains the quiet hero, a constant amid swirling innovation. Like a good friend who saves you from trouble even after decades, its simplicity endures. Today, the brand's bravest engineers and sharpest minds stretch the boundaries further, developing cars that talk to each other and see dangers coming from around the bend. Yet for all the marvels paraded across the digital landscape, the spirit remains rooted in Gothenburg's first lesson: never compromise when human life is at stake. This legacy isn't just technical. Volvo's unique history has shaped a global movement, inspiring other industries to seek both safety and nobility. The medical field references car innovation to craft new standards. Aircraft designers build upon automotive breakthroughs to safeguard passengers at 40,000 feet. Meanwhile, other automakers, once proud and territorial, now join safety summits, share data, and swap research, sometimes grudgingly, often gratefully. The ripple effect, crafted decades ago, has become a tidal wave, remaking expectations everywhere wheels and wings cross the earth. But all grand tales contain shadows. There are moments when consumer trends waver, when critics challenge the cost of perfection, when risk dares to sneak through cracks in the armor. Volvo faces new rivals, novel threats, and relentless pressure to keep up with advancing technology. The cold irony remains. Safety is an endless journey, often undervalued until tragedy scars the collective memory again. Yet the company's founders, were they to return and walk the factories today, would recognize their spirit roaring at full throttle, a culture of resilience never afraid to sacrifice convenience or profit for protection. It's tempting for history to fade into nostalgia, yet Volvo's mission demands vigilance. Modern society isn't just about fast cars and sleek edges. It's about reminding ourselves that progress, if blind to consequence, is just another name for hubris. The legacy holds strong because it's built on the harsh wisdom of failure and the warm triumph of empathy. Heroes didn't ride in on white stallions. They huddled over blueprints and stood their ground while the world scoffed. Every Volvo rolling off the line is their victory, yours to inherit and defend. So the next time you fasten your seatbelt, remember the lesson written in snowy Swedish streets, in copper, steel, and stubborn hope. The safest car in the world became that way because ordinary men did the extraordinary. They placed principle above profit and patience above panic. As civilization barrels forward and debates what comes next, one truth rings out from the Nordic twilight. The measure of greatness is not how quickly one gets ahead, but how many are spared along the way. And before you close this chapter, before the last echo fades, don't forget to subscribe to Motor Chronicles. Join a community where stories aren't just driven by horsepower but by heart. Share your reflections in the comments. Tell us what safety means to you, and let's keep forging this legacy together, one journey at a time.